Hi, I'm Laura, welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be talking about all of the things that I learned when I was traveling Europe for a month. So if you're interested, continue watching this video. As you can see, I'm back. I'm at a different location in my home, but I'm home. And I've been back for I think 3 weeks by the time you're watching it. And many of you wanted me to make a video about what I learned when I was traveling, because I asked you if you're interested in hearing what I learned, and so many of you said yes, and I also wanted to make this video. So if you're interested, this is the video for you. I divided the things that I learned into two categories. The first one is cultural and the second one is personal. So if you're interested in only one of those, just click somewhere here and you'll be taken to the moment in the video when I start talking about this specific category. So yeah. But before that, I wanted to provide a little bit of a background for those of you who didn't follow me on my Instagram when I was traveling, and tell you just about the route that we had. So we were traveling for almost 4 weeks and we went to 4 different countries. Now we started in the first country, which is our home country, which is Poland. And then we went to Germany, France, and Italy. And the specific route went like this. We went from Wrocław to Warsaw, then to Berlin, Frankfurt, Strasbourg, Colmar, Lyon, Cannes, Genoa, Bergamo, and around Cannes and Bergamo we took one-day trips here and there. So we went to Nice in France and we went to Milan and Lake Como in Italy. So that was our whole trip, and we spent up to 4 days in one place. The shortest stay was 2 days and the longest stay was I think 8 days, and that was in Cannes that we took 8 days to just take a rest and go to the beach. So that was our trip, and there are so many things that I learned about myself and about the different cultures that we experienced that I'm making this video to tell you about all of those things. So if you're interested, let's start with the cultural things that I learned about the different cultures that I experienced, but also about like traveling things and city specific things that I learned. So let's start with the first one. Now, I learned that you can pay with card anywhere you go. However, there are still places left, and these are the places that you least expect it to happen in, that you cannot pay with a card and you have to pay by cash. And this happened to us in Frankfurt. Now, Frankfurt is the financial capital of Germany. So the fact that it happened to us in Frankfurt was mind-blowing, and we were not prepared for it. Usually we don't carry cash with us when we travel, we only have a Revolut card, but we always have like little money in cash just to, you know, just in case. And by the time we went to Frankfurt, we didn't have any cash. And there was this one place in Frankfurt, a vegan restaurant, that we couldn't pay by card. When you think of places that you cannot pay by card, it's not Germany. Germany is not on the top of your list. But even if you go to Germany, you still have to have some cash on you. So that was the first thing that I learned when I was traveling in Germany. So the second thing is also about finances. Now, when I was planning our budget ahead, I knew that certain countries would be more expensive than others, and I knew that Germany would be more expensive. But I didn't know that 4 days in Berlin would be almost as expensive as 8 days in Cannes. Now, we stayed in Cannes for 8 days. We had a whole apartment to ourselves and we didn't eat out every day. In Berlin, we ate out every day, every single meal, but we only booked a room in an Airbnb. So the fact that 4 days in Berlin cost us almost the same as 8 days in Cannes just speaks volumes about how expensive Germany is, and Berlin specifically. And I learned that for the first time because that was the first time that I've ever been to Berlin by myself. By the way, if you want to save some money when you travel, and if you're going to, I don't know, Berlin, and you want to save on your accommodation by using Airbnb and you haven't ever used it, down below you can find my recommendation link that will save you up to $20 or an equivalent in your currency for your first Airbnb booking. So that is a very good deal if you ask me, and you can use it if you just click on the link in the description box. So let's go to the next thing, which is about Frankfurt. Now, I wasn't excited to go to Frankfurt because in Warsaw we had so many activist events, and in Berlin we just were like go, go, go every day. And Frankfurt was supposed to be our, rest, our pit stop. And I wasn't very excited for it. And when we get to Frankfurt, when you walk out the train station, you can see the most seedy, sketchy, shady street that you've ever seen in your life. So you are not excited to see that. But I learned that Frankfurt has a film museum, which changed my opinion about Frankfurt completely. We were there for 2 hours, which was not enough, but that was the only time that we had, and it was amazing. I learned that even the most boring places, or just places that you are not just excited about, can still surprise you and provide you so much joy and excitement and happiness, because this film museum was everything that I need in a museum, and I loved it. For the next thing, I have to take a sip of water because there's a rant coming, so just be warned that I'll be not happy about something, okay? Alright, next I learned that Flixbus service is not the same everywhere. So if you're not familiar with Flixbus, it's an international bus company that has its buses everywhere in Europe, so you can travel somewhere very cheap, very conveniently, and very easily because the places are very well connected. All of that is true. However, when you choose a cheap means of transportation, things can happen. Now, don't get me wrong, in Poland, in Germany, in Italy, Flixbus was amazing. We didn't have any problems with it. We've been using it for a very long time, and it's amazing. Now, in France, I don't know what happened to them, but in France, we've experienced not only the worst Flixbus service, but also the worst transportation service in our lives. There were 2 bus rides that I'm going to talk about that were just horrible and stressful and inconvenient, and just I'm going to tell you about them. So the first bus ride that we took was from Frankfurt to Strasbourg. So our bus was supposed to leave at 3 p.m. from Frankfurt, and there was the bus and there was the driver who was French. And up to that point we were used to Flixbus. Now it's 3 p.m. in Frankfurt, it's our lunchtime, and we are supposed to be traveling for around 6 hours to Strasbourg, more or less. We are prepared, we have our lunch boxes with us, and we get on the bus. We booked our seats to sit just behind the driver. So we got on the bus, we are taking off, and we are just, getting ready to eat because we are hungry. It's our lunchtime, we eat every 3 hours, and if we don't eat every 3 hours, our minds explode, we cannot function. And for the first time ever, once the driver starts speaking through the microphone, through the speaker system, about things like, welcome aboard this bus number, blah, blah, blah. That was the first time that we heard a driver say, we would like our passengers to be reminded that this is a means of transportation and not a diner. Food is not acceptable on this bus. Thank you. And just imagine our consternation. We were sitting directly behind the driver. We have our lunch boxes with our lunch. They are full of food, and we are just so hungry and we cannot eat. If I am hungry, I will eat and nobody can stop me. But that added unnecessary stress to our journey. And never, nowhere did we hear on any bus ride from the driver that eating is forbidden. We ate in Poland, we ate in Germany, we ate in Italy. No one cared, no driver cared. As long as you're clean and as long as you don't leave crumbs everywhere, you are fine and you can eat and nothing will happen to you, but not in France. Also, I'd like to mention that we had booked everything, all of the train journeys and bus journeys and accommodation before we left. So we couldn't change anything. So we had a next bus trip planned from Colmar to Lyon. So I got on the bus and I noticed that there was a French lady sitting in our seats. Again, we had booked the seats. So we booked a reservation for specific seats, again, behind the driver. I asked her to please change her seats because these were our seats. And they showed her our tickets on which you could see that these were in fact our seats. Also, the bus was full. So there were double seats, 2 rows of double seats, and there was 1 person in each double seat. So there were no 2 seats together that were free. And I was talking to her in French all the time. She didn't speak any English, Pavel was just standing by me and observing what was happening because he couldn't speak French. And I was talking to her in French and I tried to explain our situation. Look, we are foreigners, we bought these seats and it's a 7-hour journey and we would like to sit in our seats that we paid for. And she said no. I asked the driver again in French to help us and he said, I cannot help you. I was so shocked and I asked him, why can't you help us? This lady is sitting in our seats and we bought these seats and she didn't. She bought a different seat. And he said, I know, but today the reservation system is not working, so you cannot have these seats and you have to sit somewhere else. This conversation lasted for around 5 minutes. Everyone was watching, everyone on the bus was watching, and Pavel was getting anxious too because he didn't know what was going on. And at some point he said, just come, we'll sit wherever. And I didn't know whether I should fight for these seats, whether I should complain to someone, ask for help, but nobody would help me. And we finally went somewhere to the back of the bus and we sat separately. I was just shaking with anger and helplessness, and I did what I could to just save us from this situation, and it wasn't easy. So I learned that I will never go on a Flixbus in France again because I had 2 experiences, both of them were terrible, and by the time we finally sat together, the driver kindly reminded us that it wasn't a diner but a means of transportation. The next thing that I learned is that you cannot buy anything in any shop on a Sunday in France. I knew that this was a thing in Germany. It's also a thing in Poland, and if you ask me, my opinion is that it sucks, it's very inconvenient, and I don't like it. I like to be able to shop anywhere, anytime. But I didn't know that that was a thing in France as well. So we arrived in Strasbourg on a Saturday evening, and we were tired. We didn't have any food on us, and we didn't feel like going to a shop and just buying any groceries. But I checked whether the shop was open on Sunday, and guess what? It wasn't. So we had to go anyway, and we had to buy everything even though we were so tired. I also learned that they have a siesta in France. I thought that it was only a thing in like southern countries, but I forgot that France is also by the Mediterranean, and apparently siesta is a thing there too. So if you're traveling to France, be prepared that certain cafes, restaurants, shops may be closed between noon to 5 p.m. You have to check specific places for specific hours. Be smarter than me and be prepared that in France, siesta is a thing. Now about a good traveling experience in terms of public transport. Trains in France were amazing. We took one TGV ride from Lyon to Cannes. It took 4.5 hours and we were traveling across Provence and Côte d'Azur. It was amazing. It was incredible. First of all, that was the quickest train ride we've ever had because this particular stage, Lyon to Cannes, is the fastest, the quickest stage of TGV's route. So that was also a very nice thing to experience the quickest train ride in France. But the views and the service and just, you know, the trains are... The train was the best. We took many trains in France. After that, we traveled to Nice by train. It was lovely. I highly recommend trains if you're traveling across France. So this is something that I learned. Trains are definitely better than buses in France. The next cultural thing that I learned is that you can find some small things that resemble one another in places that are not really alike. I will explain what I mean. When we were in Strasbourg, I got 3 different vibes of the city. The first type of vibes that I experienced was London vibes, when we were just near the river, where there were so many modern and beautiful buildings. But then when we were walking around Strasbourg, we saw La Petite France, which had its own Alsatian, German, French vibe. So you could see this old France/Germany and experience that, and that was also unexpected. But then in between those two, like very modern and very traditional, there was the pure city itself, which reminded me of a small town in Poland called Legnica. I mean, it didn't remind me of Legnica, it reminded Pavel of Legnica, but when I started to think about it, it wasn't really as representative as other parts of Strasbourg. So that was very interesting to learn as well. I also learned the hard way that Lyon is a city on two hills. So if you're traveling to Lyon and you are going there in the summer, be prepared to be sweaty and panting and tired because you'll be going up and down, up and down, up and down the stairs, the hills, everything. I learned that Lyon is a very nice city. It has a very nice old town, but if you want to travel to Lyon, just pick a different season than summer because it can be very tiring to experience this beautiful city in such a heat. So yeah, I learned that Lyon is a very hard city to be experiencing in summer, but still very, very beautiful. Also, I learned that Lyon is the capital of French cuisine, and this is a very smooth transition to the next thing that I learned, which is you can eat vegan everywhere. I mean, everywhere. And I knew that because I said that in my video called 10 things that I didn't know before going vegan, but that trip only confirmed that it's ridiculously easy to be vegan anywhere. And just to tell you what we ate in Lyon, we ate the best gourmet meals in a restaurant called Like an Elephant. I highly recommend this place. That was amazing, and we ate so many delicious vegan meals when we were traveling, as you saw in Warsaw, in Berlin, and that was the last cultural thing that I learned on our trip. Yay! So moving on to the things I discovered about myself on this trip. Now, if you're going to be traveling for a month, you're bound to discover something about yourself that you didn't know before. And that happened to me. And it's even more likely to happen to you if you're traveling with some sort of an emotional baggage. And that happened to me as well. So if you're interested to learn what I learned about myself, continue watching this section of this video. I learned what it's like to be in a vegan heaven, and it's a very, very good thing and it's a very bad thing. When we were in Berlin, I could choose any type of food, any type of vegan food that I had a craving for. And that was a very spoiling situation because anytime I was eating something, I was thinking of the things that I was missing out on because I wasn't eating something else. And after 2 meals, I trained myself not to think about it. I trained myself to think, oh, you're experiencing this amazing food right now. But I still had this thought at the back of my head that I couldn't possibly eat everything. And I wanted to eat everything. So I had to keep reminding myself that I will go back to Berlin one day, hopefully. So being in a vegan heaven is a blessing and it's also a curse. But to me, it was more of a blessing still. And I just learned what it's like to be so spoiled and not know what to choose. So that was the first thing that I learned about myself, how I feel in a vegan heaven. And the answer is, I feel good. Moving on to something more serious now. I discovered that when you're traveling for a month, you will not escape your problems and you will not escape your dark thoughts. So when we set off in August, it had been 5 months after I lost my mom. Now, the first week of traveling was perfect. I was busy, I was exploring, I was happy. But when we were in Berlin and before we went to Frankfurt, the first wave of sadness came over me and I had to work through my problems and my feelings and my anxieties. Sometimes it wasn't very clear when it was happening. Like when I was in Cannes, imagine just being in Cannes for 8 days and living the best life and going to the beach and just not caring about anything bad in your life, but at the same time feeling anxious and angry and annoyed and bored and uncertain and, you know, just feeling all of those anxiety-related states that you are not familiar with and you don't know what is going on with you, and being in a very, very beautiful place on a relaxing vacation. Just imagine that. And your first reaction and my first reaction would have been to just dismiss those thoughts and not think about it. I should be exploring, I should be having fun, but it wasn't that easy. I learned that in order to fully enjoy the place that I was at, I also had to go deep inside myself and work through the bad things that I was experiencing. So even though I really wanted to just have fun and be careless and just enjoy myself all the time, there were moments that I had to allow myself to cry. There were moments that I had to allow myself to break down. There were moments that I had to allow myself to feel shitty about myself. There were so many moments that I really had to allow my darkness to take over. And I had to do that even though I didn't want to. But if I didn't pay attention to all of the bad things that I was feeling, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the good days as well. So I learned what it's like to travel with emotional baggage and take care of yourself despite your mind telling you not to pay attention to the bad things and only focus on the good things. It's not easy to do, but it's helpful, it's necessary, and it certainly helped me. Let's move on to something lighter. Okay? I learned that I knew more French than I thought I did. And that is a very, very important and inspirational realization that I made. Because before those experiences, when I was having arguments with real French people in French in France, and these were not structured situations that you have on your language lessons when you have to argue, but not really argue and use different language that you would use in a real life situation. No, that was a real life situation. And I'd never spoken to a French person in France in a real life French situation before in my life. And I did a pretty good job. Now, I gave up on that argument because I was just not feeling up for it. But I learned that I knew so much more French than I gave myself credit for. And that applied not only to French, but also to many things in my life. After that, I discovered that I am stronger than I thought I was. I'm capable of doing more things than I thought I was. I just realized that sometimes I belittle myself and give myself very little credit for what I actually can do and what I'm capable of. I realized that I have to speak a bit better about myself because I am actually capable of a lot of things and I don't have to belittle my abilities, because if I'm good at something, then I'm probably good at it, and that's okay. So my French is intermediate now. Next, I learned what it's like to revisit places that I already saw as a child or as a teenager. So what I mean is that on our itinerary, there were places that I already saw, like Berlin or Cannes or Nice or Milan, and I still wanted to see them because I wanted to experience them in a new way. So for example, I'd been to Berlin many times, but only on school trips. So I wanted to go to Berlin on my own and experience it on my own. Then I went to Cannes when I was 15, and that was a summer camp, and I didn't experience it fully again on my own. So I really wanted to go back to the places that I already saw just to experience them again and see if I really liked them or not. And I realized what it's like to revisit those places. You feel like you know them, but you don't know them. But what I mean is I also saw places that I only saw as a little girl, like places that I visited with my parents, and I haven't seen them ever since. And that brought so many memories and so many good feelings. I really liked this discovery. The next thing is I learned what it's like to live a nomadic lifestyle. So for a month, we didn't have a place to live. Like, we had our home here in Wrocław, but we changed our location every few days. So it was tiring and energy consuming, and I could experience that on my own skin. Like, I could see whether this kind of lifestyle is for me, and it isn't. Purely because I love traveling, but I also like having a home base, a place where I have my routines and where I recover and where I work on my goals. And I want to have a life where I am able to travel for as long as I want, wherever I want. I just now know that nomadic lifestyle, which is very popular now, is not for me. And that's a good thing. The next thing that I discovered about myself, or rather confirmed, because I already knew that, but it was like I newly discovered that. I discovered that I work best when I travel. What I mean by that is when I'm on a bus, on a train, on a plane, or in any new place and I am working, this is the best environment for me to work because I can focus. I am stimulated by the environment, by the changing environment, or by the new environment that I'm in, and I don't have as many distractions as I do at home. So whether I'm in transit or in another country, in a different city, if I'm somewhere else, my brain is just hyper. It's so inspired, it's so stimulated, I can focus completely. I just know for a fact that I work best when I travel, and that's why I'm going to be traveling as much as possible in my life, even though I just said I like having a home base, because I know that when I travel, my brain is just, in its best shape form. Yeah, so that's something that I also discovered again about myself. I also learned that it's a good thing to have an emergency fund when you travel. If you're going to be traveling for a month, regardless of your budget, regardless of the type of trip you're taking, whether it's backpacking or just taking trains or whatever, always have money set aside and make sure that this money will last you, this emergency fund will last you your whole trip. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when you're going to have an emergency, like your suitcase will break down and you will have to buy a new one. And that's something that happened to me, and I'm so happy that I had an emergency fund that I could use to buy a new suitcase, because if I didn't have it, we would be in a very bad position. If you want me to make a video about saving money, having an emergency fund just for travel or whatever, let me know, because this is a series that I'm considering doing. Yeah, so this is a good thing to have an emergency fund when you travel that will last you your whole trip, because you never know. Two more things that I learned. The second to last thing is I learned what it's like to feel like a movie star. Well, it sounds very cocky, but it's true. If you saw my video from Cannes, you saw that I was making a video on the red carpet at the Palais de Congrès de Festival in a black dress, which was kind of a cocktail dress, kind of a summery cocktail dress. And that was a challenge because we were there at 7 a.m. in the morning and there were still people who were going to work or just going for a walk at 7 a.m. but they could see me. And I was there high up the stairs on the red carpet and people were staring at me. They were pointing their fingers at me and just looking at me and giving me the weirdest looks or just, you know, shocked looks, because who in their right mind would be there at 7 a.m. and film a video? So I learned what it's like to be in the center of attention and how to focus when I film and when I have my pictures taken, because I had to present myself, I had to be focused, I had to be, you know, smiling, and I was still very sleepy. You could see that in the video that I was still very sleepy and my voice was, you know, croaky. So yeah, that was something that I learned. I learned what it's like to be in the center of attention and kind of a movie star. Because let's be honest, I was the star of my own video, so I can say that I'm a video star. Can I? Yeah, I can. So I learned what it's like to be a movie star in Cannes. And Cannes, I'm going back for the festival, so watch out. And the last thing I discovered about myself is what it's like to fall back in love with nature. I am a city girl. I love living in a city. I love being in a city. I love traveling to other cities. And I always thought that nature was not for me. I never understood people who could live in a village or live in a small town or outside of a big city just to be closer to nature. And sometimes I would take a trip to a forest or to the seaside, and that's great, but I always thought that I'm more of a city girl than a nature girl. And that all changed when I went to Lake Como. So we were there at the lake for one day and I fell in love. I'd never seen something like this in my entire life. The majestic mountains and the beautiful, huge, clear lake. I felt so small and I felt that the nature was just... I cannot explain it. It's... I felt like the nature had its powers just, you know, working on me. I didn't want to go back. I wanted to stay there. I wanted to sit there and breathe this clear air and just observe, take it all in, and I loved it. I loved this trip so much, and now I know that I want to be traveling both to the cities and to the nature. I discovered that I'm not only a city girl and I don't have to label myself as a city girl. I can be whatever, and that is something really important to me because I always thought that the cities are the best things that you can see. Of course, nature is cool, like it's going to be beautiful, it's fun, but it's different to think about it and it's different when you're there. So that was something that I discovered. I am back in love with nature. That was the last thing that I learned about myself during this trip. I also asked you on Instagram to ask me any questions that you have about my trip. I had one question about budgeting a trip like that. I'm already planning a video series on money, on saving, on budgeting, on planning. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to my channel. And I wanted to say that I will tackle this topic at some point in the future. But now it's the end of this video. So you now learned everything what I learned when I was traveling. And I hope this video was informational, entertaining, and inspirational, because I'm making these videos to inspire you to do something that will make you happier in your own life, whether it be small, like eating a very good vegan meal, or big, like taking a trip of a lifetime. So if you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments one thing that you learned on one of your trips, because I'm interested in finding out what you learned, because we are here to inspire one another and I want to be inspired by you as well. So if you're interested in seeing more videos on travels, films, minimalism, veganism, learning, and creating your dream life, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon so you'll be notified whenever I post. Follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of my daily life, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye!